Hey folks, Wally DM here, and today we're going to take a look at my picks for the top 5 trap books. Now these are books that I want you to be able to put on your shelves, so we're only going to look at books that are available in physical form, such as hardcover or softcover, but there are plenty of great PDFs out there, and maybe we'll do a separate video on PDF-only trap books in the near future. But for today, I want to take a look at my top 5. I have an honorable, a dishonorable mention, and a few books that I'm looking forward to. So let's get started. Coming in at number 5 on my list is the Trap Compendium by 2C Gaming. Now what I like about this book is it has a lot of unique ideas in it, but it also just gives you trap components. In fact, most of the book is just built around the fact that you have trap components, and then later on you're able to build your own traps using these components. But of course we do have some sample traps in there, and they're broken down by tier, experience points value, what is going to trigger it, and what some of the targets are. Gives you a description, some game notes, and some suggestions if you want to scale it to fit your game. Now I've really enjoyed this book so far. I think a lot of the traps are well written and they're easy to put right in your game. Now if you'd like to see a few of the traps that are in here, I've done a few videos on traps from this book. I've done the sticky situation trap, and I also did the quiet an entrance trap. Now the quiet an entrance is one of my favorites. Be sure to check it out. I'll put a link in the description below. Coming in at number 4 on my list, this is a new book for me, and it actually pushed out my honorable mention, and that is Traps, Trammels, and Triggers by Grim Press. Now again, this is a new book for me, and it only contains about 48 pages, but they've packed a lot of information in these 48 pages. What I like best about it is it gives you a list of traps by alarm, deterrent, obstruction, or offensive. So it all depends on what you're trying to do with your trap, and it also gives you whether it is a mechanical trap or if it's a magical trap. And what I really like about how they identify some of these traps as magical traps is they'll also include the School of Magic. So if a character casts a detect magic spell and one of these traps are in the area, then I can let them know that it has an aura of evocation, conjuration, necromancy, enchantment, and things of that nature. Now another aspect that I like about this book is that it goes out of its way to include more than just your swinging blade traps, your pit traps, your poison needle traps, and things like that. And it includes traps such as a curse on a chalice, or a mirror, or a spectral hand that is guarding a book, maybe a weapon or an animal. Heck, there's even a trap that is focused on an eyeball that can be summoned. So all kinds of great out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to the traps in this book. And to top this off with a little bit of extra goodness, a lot of the traps have 2 or 3 different variants. So it's almost like you're getting 3 traps for the price of 1. I really dig the idea of including variants in the book. So again, this is quickly climbing up my ladder as far as my top 5. Really enjoying going through these, and I'm hoping to do another video on one of the traps from this book really soon. If you'd like to pick this book up, I will put a link in the description below. And if you'd like to see one of these traps in action, I did a video called Unholy Blessing, and it is regarding a chalice that is cursed that gives hit points back to the characters. But a few hours later, it doesn't do so well on their stomachs. Be sure to check out that video and let me know what you think. Now my next 3 books, I had a really hard time trying to place them as 1, 2, and 3. But ultimately I decided to go the most well-rounded book for the number 1 spot. So coming in at number 3 is Grimtooth's Ultimate Traps Collection. So for those of you not familiar with Grimtooth Traps, these were very popular in the 1980s, and this entire book is actually a compilation of several different books that came out during that time period. Now there is a lot of nostalgia for folks that thumb through a Grimtooth trap book with regards to the artwork and some of the most deadliest traps that you're ever going to find. Now there are hundreds of different entries in this book for room traps, corridors, doors, items, food, you name it. And to top everything else off, a lot of the times the artwork in here is just downright hilarious. And a lot of this book is told from the point of view of Grimtooth. Now one of the things that sets this book back a little bit is it is not very beginner friendly. As a dungeon master, you're going to need to bring out your box of creativity and your own rules to each trap. Now, Grimtooth Traps is system agnostic. You're not going to find any rules for any of the systems in here, and in fact, you're not going to find much of anything with regards to guidance on how to run this in your game. You're simply given an entry that is some text, a picture to go along with it, and then you as the dungeon master have to go through and decide what the DC is going to be, how it's going to trigger, how it can be found, and things of that nature. So Grimtooth Traps comes in at number 3 for me, just because it's not beginner dungeon master friendly. You're going to need to be able to spend some time contemplating how you want to use this trap in your game. A lot of them are very deadly traps, so you may want to scale them back a little bit, but I can tell you this, I have read through a ton of trap books, and Grimtooth is one of the most creative books of traps that you're going to find. There's so many really cool, zany, and crazy ideas that you can put in your game. Now, I've dug into Grimtooth Traps quite a bit for my channel. A few of my favorite ones include Shock Therapy, the Gargoyle Bridge, and Draw Your Weapons. And all of those can be found in my trap playlist. And if you'd like to pick up a copy of Grimtooth Traps, I'll put some links for it in the description below. Now, coming in at number 2 on my list are 2 books that I purchased when I started playing D&D again in 2016, and that's Legends and Layers, Traps and Treachery, books 1 and 2. Now, these books are 2 of the most prized books in my collection. I was so happy to get these. These are some of the first they are the first 2 trap books that I had in my collection, my first puzzle books for that matter, and they are just magnificent. Now, of course, a lot of the stats are more geared towards 3rd edition or Pathfinder, but there's still plenty of great information in the text block. You're going to figure out what the trap type is, whether it's an item or an alarm or some type of a blade or a dart trap. You're going to get the activation type. You're going to find out what the trigger is, the mechanism, the effect, the damage. You're going to get DCs, a challenge rating to help you evaluate what level of characters that you can run this against. And then you're going to get full descriptions and some great black and white art that's going to just give you a little bit of a glimpse into what the trap might look like. Now, while Traps and Treachery does have a lot of the classics like swinging blades and poisonous gas, crushing walls, and different types of items and things of that nature, there's still a lot of creativity in here for each trap entry. They present a lot of those in different ways, and then you also get a lot of the traps that are just really wild and just very creative, and I absolutely love that about traps. I like to see things that are outside the box. Now, as you can tell by the trap playlist on my channel, I absolutely love this series. I've used a lot of traps in videos, and I will probably do quite a few more. In fact, the first trap video that I did was One Last Coin, and it came from Traps and Treachery. If you'd like to see some examples of the traps in these books, then look in my playlist for One Last Coin, Hangman's Last Laugh, and Time's Up, and also the Hall of Illusions. The Hall of Illusions was one of my most popular traps. You can find links to those in the description below, or check out the trap playlist. And of course, if you'd like to pick up Legends and Layers, Traps and Treachery 1 and 2, I'll put links to the physical book as well as the PDF in the description below. Now, before I reveal my number 1 pick, I thought I would let you know that there are 2 more trap books that I have pre-ordered and I am very much looking forward to. The first one is the DM's Guide to Puzzles, Traps, and Dungeons. I have the Random Encounters book and I really like it, so I'm hoping this book will be just as good. And when I get it, I believe it's supposed to be out in mid-2022, and we will probably do a few videos on traps and puzzles from the book. The other book that I have pre-ordered through Kickstarter is Yarg's Guide to Traps and Puzzles. I don't know a lot about this book yet, but I anticipate it being a lot of fun. And again, we'll review that later on the year when I get that in hand. So be sure that you're subscribed and stay tuned. Now, I also have an honorable mention, and that's going to be Trapsmith by Kobold Press. Now, this is an older book designed for Pathfinder, but it has a lot of great information in here, and it has some really cool traps that you could add to your game. Now, most of these are your basic pit traps and acid traps and darts and swinging blades and alarm traps and things of that nature, but they have made it where they are a little bit different. They added a little bit of flavor to these, and all of these traps have stat blocks that give you what type of trap it is, what type of perception is needed to see it, how to disable it, and the DC for that, what will trigger it, and what the effect is. As you continue through the book, there is a section that tells you how to combine the traps if that's something you wanted to do. There's a section that deals with pesky rogues and their nimble fingers, and there's a 6th level adventure, The Whispers of Wormwood, if you want to run an entire trap adventure with kobolds at the heart of it. So the Trapsmith by Kobold Press is well worth picking up. I will put a link if you'd like to grab the PDF or book in the description below. And if you'd like to see an example of Trapsmith, I did the Ball of Tentacles, and you can find that in my trap playlist and check it out and see what you think. And I do have a dishonorable mention, and that is going to be Dungeons & Dragons Book of Challenges. Now this is a 3rd edition product, and I see it on forums and social media all the time of folks recommending this book, and I really don't recommend it. Now this is supposed to have dungeon rooms, puzzles, and traps, but it reads so awkward. The entries are long and boring and just disorienting, and I just don't get enough out of this book. I have a lot of times I have to read it and reread it and reread it just to try to understand. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a few good ideas in here, but as far as wanting a trap book that you can just put traps into your game, this is far from what you need. You're definitely going to want the other entries on this list. Now let's take a look at my number 1 pick for trap books and Dungeons & Dragons, and that's going to be Treacherous Traps by Nord Games. Now this is a book that is the complete trap book. Now it doesn't have quite the imagination that a Grimtooth or a Traps, Trammels, and Triggers would have, or as many classics as Traps and Treachery, but this is by far the most well-rounded trap book that you're going to find. Right off the bat, you're going to see that the book is well structured, dividing all of the traps up by levels. So you have levels 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12, 13 through 16, and 17 through 20. Not only that, but they label each difficulty of the trap as either a setback, moderate difficulty, dangerous, or perilous. And I think that's really handy to have if you just want to put an obstacle in the way, or if you're looking for something that the characters are really going to be challenged with and try to overcome. Now, while there is a lack of artwork in this book, the writing is still really good and it is very clear and precise, so that will definitely help you in running these. You can read through it once and know exactly how to run the trap. It lets you know if it's a mechanical or a magical trap. It gives you an idea of what triggers it, what the effect is, and how the party can use countermeasures in order to disable the trap, find it, and things of that nature. Now we're just getting started. It's not just the basic traps that are in this book. I mean, there are 250 traps total in here, so that is plenty worthwhile for picking this up. But there are also some additional things that you're not going to find in other books. And primarily, you are going to have complex traps in here. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, a complex trap is one that acts on initiative. So when the characters encounter this, we're going to roll for initiative, and the trap will have its own initiative, usually twice, and it will act, or the triggers or effects will happen on its initiative. So we're going to run these just like a combat encounter. Now we have 250 traps and complex traps that are in this book, but we also have a trigger and effect generation table. So we can actually randomly determine or create our own traps. We roll a percentile die and we get triggers, we get effects, and we can combine them all to make some type of monstrosity that our players are absolutely going to hate. And to top things off, at the end of the book, we have ideas on how to run trap-centric dungeons, puzzles, riddles, and even some famous NPC characters that deal with traps. So Treacherous Traps by Nord Games is well structured, well organized. It has easy to run traps that you can just put in your game, and it's perfect for beginning dungeon masters as well as experienced dungeon masters. And with over 250 traps plus a random trap generator, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this book. And that's why it's my #1 pick for a trap book that needs to be on your bookshelf. So those are my picks for the top 5 trap books for Dungeons & Dragons. How many of these do you have on your shelves? And if you're interested in picking any of them up in a PDF or a physical form, I will put links to them all in the description below. In the meantime, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, as I'm going to be putting out more trap videos in the near future. But in the meantime, be sure to check out my playlist of traps, where you're going to find trap videos from all of these books that we've reviewed today. So that's all I have for you today. Be sure to leave a comment below and let me know how you would have ranked these books or if there's a book missing from the list. Thank you very much for watching, and on to the next.